Silence in Raven Hall was never real. It was constructed. The building had been designed that way. High vaulted ceilings, polished wood that absorbed sound and returned it softened, flags aligned with geometric precision along the walls. Light filtered through narrow upper windows and settled evenly across the chamber floor, as if even brightness had been regulated. I had believed, once, that quiet meant control. That morning I understood the difference between quiet and restraint. Every seat was filled, dress uniforms pressed into sharp lines, civilian observers in dark suits, a few defense contractors in the back row who did not want to be noticed but wanted to witness. The air carried the faint scent of starch and paper. My father sat in the second row. Michael Reeves always chose the second row. Close enough to appear involved, far enough to avoid responsibility for what unfolded. His posture was perfect. Shoulders back, chin lifted, expression composed into something that suggested certainty without strain. Kyle sat at the defense table. He looked composed, controlled, charismatic even now, the golden sun under institutional lighting. His tie was navy, his cufflinks subtle. He nodded occasionally toward his attorneys, as if reassuring them. I stood along the side wall. Military justice, my father used to say, was safe office work. He said it with a tone that sounded like approval but carried dismissal. He preferred tangible risk, hardware, contracts, expansion. The real achievement in our family was Kyle. Defense technology, cross-border procurement, advanced systems integration. He moves things that matter, my father once told a neighbor, not paperwork. Now Kyle was charged with illegally exporting restricted navigation modules through an offshore company registered in Iceland. Bold business risk, my father had called it at dinner the week before charges were filed. Bold. Captain Mia Thorne stepped forward. She did not raise her voice. She did not clear her throat. She simply adjusted the display console and said, "We will replay the Karan Valley transmission." A few officers shifted. A pen rolled softly against a desk and was stilled. The defense team had been confident until that point. Their strategy was consistent. Undermine the process, question the chain of custody, imply personal bias. They had referenced my recusal repeatedly, suggesting that even stepping away proved emotional contamination. Investigation led initially by a young officer with familial conflict. One of them had said on record. I had formally removed myself the moment Kyle's name surfaced in the encrypted routing logs, documented it, signed it, filed it. Conflict of interest acknowledged and neutralized. Procedure matters. That did not stop them from building a narrative. The lights dimmed. The audio began. Static first, a textured hiss, then wind across an open mic, then the voice, measured, direct, issuing coordinates. 36 seconds. In those 36 seconds, the argument collapsed. The order embedded precise grid references, not generalized patrol vectors, not broad sweep instructions, targeted coordinates, formatted in a way consistent with encrypted export authorization keys. I watched the waveform on the side monitor without moving. Lieutenant Daniel Reed leaned slightly forward at the technical station. His eyes narrowed. His hand hovered above the keyboard. "That wasn't a sweep," he said quietly. He did not realize his microphone was still live. The words traveled across the chamber, not loud, just clear. Robert Thorne sat 3 rows ahead of my father, former project supervisor, civilian liaison during the Karan Valley operation, a man accustomed to briefing rooms and layered approvals. He had testified earlier that the operation had been routine. Routine. I saw his shoulders stiffen first, then the color left his face in increments, not dramatic. Just a slow draining, as if something essential had been removed from him without permission. He understood. The coordinates matched the routing pattern discovered in the Icelandic intermediary's encrypted archive. The archive Kyle's defense had described as circumstantial aggregation. The recording continued. The final confirmation phrase aligned exactly with the timestamp on the unauthorized export documentation. When it ended, there was no immediate reaction. Silence settled. This time it was not decorative, it was structural. Captain Thorne allowed it to hold. Then she said, "The transmission has been authenticated by 3 independent analysts. Metadata confirms alignment with the export window under review." She did not look toward me. She did not need to. The defense attorney rose. His voice remained steady, but the edges had shifted. He attempted to reframe the transmission as misinterpreted. He suggested incomplete operational context. He implied that field language often differs from written classification. The judge did not interrupt. He examined the transcript. My father leaned forward slightly. He had always believed in Kyle's competence. He had also believed in the malleability of perception. That clarity could be argued into ambiguity if one was confident enough. He did not yet understand that metadata does not respond to charisma. Kyle shifted in his chair. It was the first unscripted movement I had seen from him all morning. A brief adjustment, a tightening of his jaw. He leaned toward his counsel, whispered something. The attorney nodded, but he did not look reassured. Robert Thorne's hands were trembling now, small tremors at the fingertips, the kind that only someone trained to observe physiological cues would notice. I noticed. I removed my phone from my pocket. Not to message, not to call. I opened the secure documentation application authorized for court observation, time-stamped, encrypted, logged, and I began recording the room. Not the audio. The room, Kyle's posture, Robert's hands, my father's fixed expression. The judge spoke at last. The court finds the evidence lawfully obtained and materially relevant. A single sentence, no emphasis, no drama. Kyle's bail request was denied that afternoon. There was no outburst, no raised voices. The proceedings concluded with administrative precision. In the corridor afterward, conversations were subdued. Shoes against tile, low murmurs, controlled breathing. My father stepped into my path. He opened his mouth as if to say something rehearsed, something measured. Then he closed it. He nodded instead. I returned the nod. Kyle did not look at me as officers escorted him past. He had always assumed I would stand behind him in rooms like this. That family meant alignment. I had aligned with procedure. 3 months later, he accepted a plea deal. The house was listed 2 weeks after that. The sign went up on a Thursday. I drove past it once. Did not slow. A year later, I was promoted to major and appointed head of strategic investigations. My father sent an email. "We were wrong. We're proud of you." It was brief. No elaboration, no qualifiers. I read it at my desk inside Fort Ashford's Secure Analysis Center. The room hummed with servers and filtered air. Screens displayed patterns of data moving across invisible channels. Recognition that mattered had already been entered into the official record. In my world, truth carries more weight than words. Raven Hall was quiet again the next time I entered it, but I no longer mistook that for safety. Silence, I learned, is not absence. It is pressure, waiting for precision. Fort Ashford did not resemble Raven Hall. There were no flags arranged for symbolism, no polished wood, no audience. The Strategic Analysis Center sat underground, sealed behind reinforced access doors and biometric scanners that registered temperature shifts in skin. The air was colder, filtered, purposeful. Inside, there were no spectators, only data. When the investigation into the Icelandic routing anomaly first surfaced, it was not dramatic. It appeared as a minor irregularity in a shipment log, a delayed timestamp, a duplicated authorization code that should have been unique. Patterns reveal themselves quietly. I was assigned to the initial review team before Kyle's name ever appeared in the metadata trail. That matters, because by the time his attorneys began saying personal bias, the routing map had already been constructed by 3 separate analysts who had never met him. The Icelandic intermediary company had a clean public face: renewable energy consultancy, maritime logistics advisory, tax-compliant, audited. Behind that face, its encrypted communications revealed narrow transmission windows aligned with classified export schedules originating from domestic defense contractors. The coordinates embedded in the Karan Valley audio transmission fit precisely into one of those windows. I remember the moment the alignment confirmed. It was 2:17 in the morning. The servers hummed in steady cycles. Blue light from the monitors flattened everything into shadowless geometry. I had been reviewing cross-reference timestamps for 6 hours. No interruption, no conversation. When the overlay completed, the export key sequence and the transmission grid locked into synchronization within 0.04 seconds. That margin was not accidental. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes for exactly 3 breaths. Then I documented it. Procedure before reaction. By 8 o'clock, the chain of custody report had been updated. The encrypted logs were duplicated, sealed, and transferred to an independent review unit. My recusal request followed within the hour. Conflict of interest declared. The room had been silent when I informed my commanding officer. He studied the file, then studied me. "You understand what this will look like?" he said. "Yes," I answered. "And you're certain?" "Yes." He nodded once. Not approval, recognition. After that, the investigation moved without me. I watched from the perimeter. Kyle's attorneys framed the case as administrative overreach. They argued that routing anomalies occur in complex systems, that grid alignments can be misinterpreted, that language in field transmissions is often coded differently than it appears. They underestimated redundancy. 3 independent verification teams authenticated the export keys. 2 separate cyber forensics divisions confirmed the Icelandic server's mirror archive. A 4th review panel reconstructed the financial trail leading back to a subcontractor account partially controlled by Kyle's company. Not bold, deliberate. My father called during that phase. He did not ask about details. He asked about loyalty. "You know how these systems work," he said. "You know how narratives get built." "Yes," I replied. "And you're sure you're not letting them build one around him?" There was a pause long enough for him to interpret my silence as hesitation. "I recused myself," I said. "That's not what I asked." I did not answer further. In the Strategic Analysis Center, personal narratives do not alter server logs. Weeks passed. The Icelandic intermediary attempted to purge portions of its archive. That attempt triggered automated alerts within our monitoring protocols. The deletion pattern itself became evidence. Data resists panic. When the declassified 36-second order was prepared for court replay, I was not present in the preparation room. I did not need to be. I had already memorized its structure. The phrase preceding the coordinates, the pause before confirmation, the subtle inflection that indicated specificity rather than sweep. Language tells on intention. During Kyle's preliminary hearing, his lead attorney referred to the Karan Valley operation as routine stabilization. He used the word routine 4 times. Routine does not require embedded export keys. After bail was denied, my father stopped calling for several weeks. Then the house went on the market. It was larger than necessary, built during years when Kyle's contracts expanded rapidly. My father had insisted it symbolized progress. Progress is expensive when liquidity collapses. I did not attend the closing. Inside Fort Ashford, the Iceland routing case concluded with administrative finality. Asset seizures were processed. Offshore accounts frozen. Export privileges permanently revoked. The file closed with a classification marker and a retention schedule. I remained in my assigned division. A year later, when I was promoted to major and appointed head of strategic investigations, the ceremony was small. No ballroom, no applause beyond what protocol required. My father was not there. An email arrived the following week. "We were wrong. We're proud of you." No subject line, no elaboration. I read it once, then archived it. In the Analysis Center, recognition exists in documented outcomes. Truth entered into the official record does not require applause. It requires accuracy. Ravenhall had been loud in its silence. Fort Ashford was quiet in a different way, not waiting, working. And somewhere between those two rooms, the illusion of our family's hierarchy dissolved, not through confrontation, through alignment. Data aligned with transmission, transmission aligned with export, export aligned with consequence. Kyle signed his plea agreement without spectacle. My father sold the house without comment. I returned to my desk. There is a discipline in not explaining yourself when the record speaks. There is strength in allowing systems to complete their work. I did not win anything. I did not lose anything. I remained. A year later, the promotion ceremony lasted 9 minutes. No orchestra, no press, no extended remarks about sacrifice or legacy. The room was rectangular, functional, fluorescent lit. A framed flag behind the podium, a short list of names. Mine was second. Major Reeves, appointed head of strategic investigations. The colonel shook my hand, firm, brief. His grip did not linger. He did not smile broadly. He did not need to. Recognition in the military is precise. It does not bloom, it is recorded. I returned to my office underground before the applause in the corridor had fully dissolved. Head of Strategic Investigations meant access to broader clearance tiers. It meant oversight authority on cases that involved not just export violations, but systemic vulnerabilities. It meant people would begin to measure their language differently when I entered a room. It did not mean I felt different. My desk was the same. Matte surface, dual monitors, secure terminal to the right, a thin stack of files waiting for review. Control does not announce itself. It settles. 3 weeks into the position, I authorized a cross-divisional audit of subcontractor encryption practices. Routine, necessary, unrelated to Kyle. Or so it appeared. Patterns repeat. The Icelandic intermediary had been sophisticated in structure, but careless in rhythm. Human error always leaves a pulse. In the new audit, I noticed a similar pulse. Micro delays in authentication chains across 3 separate vendors. Nothing illegal yet, just misaligned. I did not escalate publicly. I requested deeper review through internal channels. No commentary, no accusation, documentation first. In the evenings, my apartment remained quiet. I had moved closer to base after the promotion. Smaller space, fewer objects, controlled environment. My father's email remained archived. "We were wrong. We're proud of you." I had read it only once. The phrasing mattered. Not "I was wrong." We were wrong. Collective responsibility diffused into abstraction. Pride offered after consequence carries less weight than respect offered before. 2 months after my promotion, I received an invitation, not from family, from a federal oversight committee reviewing systemic vulnerabilities in defense exports. My name had been forwarded based on prior case documentation. I attended in uniform. The room was larger than Raven Hall, but quieter. No tension, no spectacle, just legislators, analysts, advisors. They asked about procedural safeguards, about cross-border encryption patterns, about how human loyalty interferes with compliance. I answered without narrative. Systems fail when oversight becomes performative, I said at one point. Transparency must be structural, not relational. One senator nodded slowly. No applause. After the session, an older civilian advisor approached me. "You handled the Reeves case professionally," he said. He did not specify which Reeves. "I handled a routing violation," I replied. He studied me for a moment longer than necessary, then extended his hand. "Thank you." That night, I did not feel vindicated. I felt aligned. Back at Fort Ashford, the subcontractor audit revealed preliminary evidence of unauthorized data mapping. Not export yet. Preparation. I initiated containment protocols quietly. Accounts were frozen before public disclosure. Internal review teams engaged before contractors were notified. When the official memo circulated, my name appeared only in the authorization footer, head of strategic investigations. No explanation. My father called 3 days later. I recognized the number immediately. I let it ring once more than necessary before answering. "Major," he said, as if testing the title. "Yes?" "I saw something on the news about export audits. That your division—" "My division enforces compliance," I said. A pause. "You could have ruined him," he said finally. "Kyle." I did not respond immediately. "The system responded to evidence," I said, "not to me." Silence stretched. "I underestimated you," he added. It was closer to direct. I waited. "I thought you preferred paperwork to risk," he said. "I prefer accountability," I replied. He exhaled. "I don't expect anything," he said. "I know." There was nothing else to discuss. When I ended the call, I did not feel closure. I felt distance. Weeks later, I received confirmation that the subcontractor case would move to formal review. Preventative measures had worked. No unauthorized exports occurred. Quiet success rarely makes headlines. It makes absence. One evening, I remained in the analysis center after most staff had left. The servers hummed. Blue light flattened the room into geometry again. I opened the archived file from the Iceland case, not to revisit Kyle, to review process integrity. Every timestamp aligned, every recusal documented, every authentication verified independently. The record was clean. Outside the facility, autumn had settled. Leaves thinned along the perimeter fence, air sharper, movement slower. My father sent another email 2 months later, shorter. "Dinner, if you're ever back in town." No commentary, no request for forgiveness, no insistence. I did not respond immediately. Control is not refusal, it is choice. I scheduled the message for review in 30 days, not to punish, to measure. In strategic investigations, timing alters outcome. At the end of the fiscal year, our division received formal commendation for systemic compliance enforcement. The memo circulated internally. My name appeared in bold once. No ceremony, no audience. Raven Hall had been built for spectacle. Fort Ashford was built for durability. I did not need my father to understand the difference. The official record already did. I waited 29 days before replying to my father's email. Not 30. Timing should feel deliberate, not theatrical. The message had remained flagged in my secure inbox while cases moved across my desk. Subcontractor audits, encryption anomalies, oversight briefings. Each file opened, reviewed, annotated, and redirected with measured precision. Dinner, if you're ever back in town. No apology, no explanation. No insistence, just proximity offered without language to support it. On the 29th day, I responded with one sentence. "I will be in town Thursday, 1900. No greeting, no sign-off. Control begins with parameters. The restaurant he chose was modest, not the country club, not the larger house he once insisted defined us. A quiet place near the old courthouse, brick exterior, dim interior, tables spaced carefully enough to avoid overhearing. I arrived at 1858. He was already seated. Michael Reeves had aged in ways photographs do not capture. The posture remained upright, but the shoulders carried weight differently. His suit was conservative, dark, slightly worn at the cuffs. He stood when I approached. "Major," he said again. "Dad." We shook hands, not an embrace. He gestured toward the chair opposite him. I sat. Menus lay unopened between us. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. I watched his hands, still steady, still deliberate. A man accustomed to managing tools and expectations. "I sold the house," he said finally. "I know." He nodded once, acknowledging that I would. Smaller place now, easier. Control shrinking to fit consequence. A server approached. Water poured. Orders taken without discussion beyond the necessary. When we were alone again, he folded his hands. "I thought strength looked a certain way," he said. I did not interrupt. "I thought it was visible, loud, risk-taking, expansion." His eyes lifted to meet mine. I didn't understand discipline the way you do. It was not apology. It was recalibration. The system doesn't care about visibility, I said. It cares about alignment. He exhaled slowly. Kyle writes, he added. I held still. From where he is. He did not say prison. He says you never looked at him in court. I didn't need to. He absorbed that. Your mother. He stopped, adjusted. She thinks you could have intervened. I recused myself. I know that. He hesitated. She thinks family should override process. There it was, the fracture line we had always avoided naming. Family is not exemption, I said. It's responsibility. Silence returned, not hostile, measured. The food arrived, plates placed with care, steam rising briefly before dissolving. We ate without commentary on taste. Halfway through the meal, he set his fork down. I read the transcript, he said, of the hearing. I saw the part where they called you biased. Yes, I should have said something. I met his eyes. In that room, I said, your words would not have altered the metadata. His jaw tightened slightly. That's not the point. No, I agreed, it isn't. We let that settle. The restaurant's ambient noise created a buffer around our table. Conversations blurred. Glassware clinked softly. I underestimated you, he said again, this time without deflection. I did not thank him. You underestimated process, I replied. His lips pressed into a thin line. That may be worse. After dessert was offered and declined, he reached into his jacket and removed a small envelope. Not thick, not dramatic. He slid it across the table. I did not open it immediately. It's not money, he said, just documentation. I waited. I amended my will. I watched his face carefully. Your title and position are listed accurately, he continued, and there's a clause. I opened the envelope. A copy of the amendment. Language precise. Assets distributed evenly. No conditional transfers. No preference. One paragraph stood out. In the event of dispute, resolution shall defer to documented record and lawful process. I closed the envelope. You didn't need to show me this, I said. I did, he replied. Not for approval, for acknowledgement. Outside, the evening air had cooled. Streetlights reflected faintly on damp pavement. We stood near the entrance. I don't expect anything, he said again. I know. He hesitated. Will you come by before you leave town? Tomorrow, I said. Briefly. He nodded. No embrace. We walked in opposite directions. The next afternoon I visited the smaller house. Fewer rooms, less display, functional furniture. The absence of excess felt intentional. My mother was not there. Photographs lined a narrow hallway. Some removed, some replaced. One frame held my promotion photo. Uniform pressed, insignia visible, accurate. He noticed me looking. I corrected a few narratives, he said quietly. I did not respond. We sat in the living room. No television on, no performance. Your email, I said finally. The first one. He waited. We were wrong, I quoted. He nodded. I was wrong, he said. The adjustment was small, precise. I inclined my head once. Not forgiveness, recognition. After 20 minutes, I stood. Duty does not pause for reconciliation. At the door, he spoke again. You don't need to prove anything anymore. I never did, I replied. Outside, the sky was clear. Back at Fort Ashford that evening, I returned to my office underground. The servers hummed. Screens displayed ongoing investigations, patterns in motion. On my desk sat a new file. Preliminary irregularities in a procurement chain, unrelated to my family, related to responsibility. I opened it. Raven Hall had once felt like a stage. Now it was simply a building where records were entered. My father's recognition existed in amended documentation. The official record had always existed. I continued working. Control restored does not require announcement. It requires maintenance. As this story closes, I leave you with a quiet question. When truth stands on its own, without anger or explanation, who truly changes? If this story stayed with you, share your thoughts calmly below and remain here if you value stories where silence carries weight.